The movie is titled The Art of Racing in the Rain, and the main character's name is Denny. Denny is a very reliable race car driver. He can even predict the weather conditions during the race. He can tell whether it will rain or not. Well, one day, Denny visited the house of a pair of grandparents who had quite a few dogs. Well, Denny also plans to adopt one of the dogs. Of the many puppies, there was one dog that caught Denny's attention, and Denny also caught the dog's attention. Immediately, Denny felt that the dog he would choose to adopt. Denny also named the dog with the name Enzo. Enzo really likes watching car racing broadcasts on TV with Denny. Those moments made Enzo fall in love with Denny's world, which is the world of car racing. Wherever Denny goes, Enzo always goes with him. Enzo always watched Denny who was racing, even at the race circuit. And while in the race, when the other racers were only focused on competing for speed, Denny didn't just think about how fast he was, but he also predicted whether it would rain or not. So Denny immediately replaced his car tires with special rain tires. Finally, when it really rained, many other racers' cars slipped, because it was slippery, and they just thought about changing tires. However, unlike the rest of the drivers, Denny was driving safely. There is one sentence from Denny that is really inspiring. The best drivers only focus on the present, never think about the past, and never think about the future. And finally, Denny became the champion in the race. But Denny's name is still far from famous, so he still has to take on several other jobs as well, such as teaching as a car racing teacher, and so on. Until he can get his own sponsor, and can become the main driver in his team. Denny's dream is to become a Formula One driver one day. Well, long story short, a year has passed. Denny and Enzo's moments of togetherness are always seen every day. For Enzo, his whole world was only one, which was Denny. Until one day, Denny met a woman named Eve. Since the relationship between Denny and Eve, Enzo became jealous because his attention for him was divided. When Denny cuddled with Eve, and takes Eve to the race circuit, Enzo feels that Denny is now paying more attention to Eve than he is. Eve herself wasn't a person who liked animals too much at first, but because of her boyfriend Denny, finally Eve slowly tried to like Enzo as well. Until one day, Denny and Eve got married. And since that wedding, Enzo's world has changed. Right now to him, the two of them were Enzo's world. There is one sentence from Denny that Enzo will always remember. Which is, take care of Eve like you take care of me. Actually, Denny and Eve's marriage was not approved by Eve's parents, who could say they were rich people. Because of Denny's profession as a car racer. Eve's parents are afraid that Denny will one day have an accident and leave Eve alone. But Denny said that in racing, he has very strong predictions, and he will never crash once. Long story short, there came a time when Eve...
I'm pregnant.
Did you know about this?
Since then, the three of them have been very happy. But then, Denny has been very busy because he has to earn more money, by taking additional teaching classes, and becoming a supporting racer in various places. Now that even makes the moment of Enzo, and Eve alone at home getting closer. Until then the time of delivery arrived, but Denny could not accompany Eve, because there was an important race. Enzo also continued to watch over the two people, where Eve was giving birth, and Denny was racing. And finally, Denny and Eve baby was born. The most beautiful creature Enzo had ever seen in his life. The new baby daughter was named Zoe. Enzo is now ordered to take care of Zoe, as well as he has always taken care of Eve and Denny all this time. Day after day, Enzo always plays and looks after Zoe. Year after year passed, until now that Zoe also has grown up. But there is one time when Eve and Zoe wanted to go to their grandparents' house. They either forgot to feed Enzo or forgot leaving Enzo alone. They locked the door and didn't come home for days. Even Denny, who was busy racing, was also not at home. Enzo was at the house waiting for them to come home, but for days no one had come. No one fed him, all the exits were locked and Enzo was very hungry. Enzo only drank toilet water in the bathroom. For those days, Enzo only ate one food after another, that fell on the floor that he found. Until Enzo tried to bark, and tried to call someone outside the window, but no one knew. But fortunately, Denny came home, and he was surprised to see Enzo left for days without food. And finally Denny gave him food. After a while, Eve and Zoe went home, and apologized to Enzo for her carelessness. It turns out that Eve's departure yesterday turned out to be to the hospital. because Eve suffered from nauseous and dizzy. From that day on, Eve seemed to be really tired. She often took medicine and frequently vomited too. And one day, when Enzo and Eve were running, Eve fainted. Eve was then taken to the hospital, and she was diagnosed by the doctor with cancer. Since then, Eve has been hospitalized for weeks, and when Eve returns home, Enzo is surprised to see that Eve is no longer the same person Enzo had known. Her very thin body, missing hair, and very pale skin. The days passed, until one day, Eve breathed out her last breath before Enzo's eyes. While everyone was sleeping that night, Enzo was there alone watching Eve die. After the funeral, the family was no longer as happy as it used to be. Denny and Zoe become stronger souls than before. Zoe no longer plays with dolls. Denny takes care of Zoe and has to work alone. In that painful situation, Eve's parents said things that really made Denny angry. They want to take the custody of Zoe, because they think that Denny can't take good care of Zoe if he keeps going out of town to race. Denny was still adamant that no matter what, Zoe would stay with him. Finally, Zoe's parents sued Denny in court for Zoe's custody. Because they had more money, Denny was cornered, and constantly pressured by them to give up Zoe. When Denny wanted to give up, and let Zoe go with them, Enzo, who saw Denny, felt that Denny's attitude was not the Denny that Enzo had known. Denny, in the eyes of Enzo, was a person who never gives up, and will always fight to win his race. Therefore, in order to raise Denny's spirit, Enzo also gives a sign to Denny, to invite him to run, so that Denny's mind can come back to his senses, and can be excited again. But when on a night run in the rain, Denny and Enzo usually run together with a latch. However, this time, Denny, who was feeling stressed, forgot to bring Enzo's latch. Finally, during the run, Enzo was left behind, and when they crossed the road, then suddenly... Enzo was immediately rushed to the nearest veterinary clinic. Fortunately, Enzo was still alive. The doctor was also surprised, because his body shouldn't be as strong as it used to be, for such an old dog. But at Enzo's very old age, it seems Enzo still has a reason to stay alive to do his last duty as a dog. Long story short. Finally, when Denny wanted to give up, and sign the Zoe custody handover letter, then suddenly...
Enzo! Enzo! Hey, okay, you made your...
Seeing Enzo's behavior, Denny immediately knew what Enzo meant. At last, Denny became strong again. He ventured to attend court and prosecute whatever the risks. But unexpectedly in the court, Eve's father always cornered Denny, and said that Denny didn't have time to take care of Zoe. However, Eve's mother actually contradicted, and said that Denny was an excellent father to Zoe. Since then, Denny had won in the court, and finally Zoe can stay with them. The three of them were now able to get together again like before, even without Eve's presence. And soon, Denny got an offer he had been dreaming of, which is being a Ferrari's race car driver. Hearing the voice on the phone, Enzo was pleased, because during his life till now, he had been able to accompany Denny to achieve his goals. And one day, on Zoe's 9th birthday party, Eve's parents also came. It looked like they had all forgiven each other, and were having a great time together. But under Zoe's desk, there lies Enzo on the floor, who felt that his duty as a dog in the family was done. Then came a day when Denny had just reached home. Denny saw the very old Enzo lying helplessly. At that moment, Enzo could only smell the scent that he really liked from Denny. Namely the smell of oil, gas, and various kinds of typical racing circuit scents that Enzo really liked. Denny picked him up and took him to the sofa. They watched together Enzo's favorite TV show for the last time. The car racing broadcast. And finally, after watching the race, Denny thought of something. That is to invite Enzo to experience what it's like to live on a racing circuit. And while on that circuit, Enzo really felt very happy. He breathed the fresh air of the circuit for the first time, and last time while remembering all his stories with Denny, Eve, and Zoe.
You've been a good friend. very good friend.
And the movie ends.